Welcome to Stories. I'm your host, Delia Quigley, and here I interview myself along with a diverse community of women willing to share their stories on all aspects of their well-lived lives. Now, if you listened to the earlier episode on the warrior stage of a woman's life, then you know that I see this time, not just menopause, but the whole passage through our 50s and early 60s as a powerful turning point. And if you haven't heard that episode yet, then tune into Season 1, Episode 3. So I encourage you to go back after today's conversation. And it gives you a fuller picture of why this stage matters so much. But today, we're zooming in on just one piece of that transition of menopause. And let's be honest, our culture still tends to handle it like a diagnosis, like something's wrong with a woman, something needs fixing. And the default response is often medication. The nutritionist I'm speaking with today, Erin Parekh, brings a very different angle, one that's still grounded in evidence and science, but also deeply respectful of what a woman's body is actually doing. She's adamant about one thing: know your numbers. Before guessing, Googling, or grabbing supplements off the shelf, she wants women to get real blood work so they can see exactly what's happening in their systems. What I love about this conversation is that it builds the two worlds, the biological changes we can measure and the deeper transformation we feel. It helps us see that menopause isn't just something to survive. It's something we can understand, support, and even embrace with the right information in hand. So settle in, pour yourself a cup of tea. Let's talk about what really happens in your body during menopause, why blood work matters, and how a science-based approach can help this transition feel far more grounded and empowering.
No, thank you so much for having me. So I'm Erin Parekh. I'm a functional medicine nutritionist, and I really focus on women's health, everything from fertility through, perimenopause, menopause, and everything sort of in between. I always say I work with women in those sort of like liminal phases. So
the main topic I wanted to explore with you today is that you talk a lot about women's hormones. And currently, even though I'm long past menopause, I am surrounded by a lot of women who are in menopause, and it really varies as to what they're doing and how they're treating it, and really coming down to, Western medicine kind of saying, well, menopause is a disease that women suffer. So you want to weigh in on this first? Let's just kind of a little overview of what menopause is.
yeah, well, first of all, menopause is one day, right? It's the moment that you basically don't have a period for 12 months of time. And it's something that naturally happens to literally every woman who has uterus, ovaries, right? We go through menopause. And I think it's become this hot button topic. And I'm really glad that we're talking about it, right? Because I think for so long when women have been sort of gaslit that, oh, just take an anxiety medication or go on birth control or something and just kind of like tamp down your symptoms and just like deal with it. But menopause isn't a disease, right? It's just this biological transition that we all will go through, that can start anywhere, up to 10 years, 6 to 8 years before we even have that last period. We're going through their transition, or what's called perimenopause.
So how long does a full, okay, we got the perimenopause. How long is the full menopause transition? How many years does that happen?
I mean, it can be, for some women, it could be, fairly short, like 4 years or so. For other women, they could start experiencing symptoms 8 years, right, before go into menopause on that last day of 12 months after your last period. So I think really when we're talking about it, and every woman experiences it differently, right? Some women will experience the classic hot flashes and night sweats and things like that. Other women may have mood swings, brain fog, heavier periods, lighter periods, right? So it can really change and vary based on the woman, which is why I think it's so hard for traditional medical professionals to really understand what's happening, because you have these women who come in with vastly different symptoms, but they're all sort of related to this transition that we're going through.
But don't they all have the dreaded 10 pounds of weight that, I mean, that's really between the hot flashes and, oh my God, I've gained all this weight. Those are the two I really hear the most about.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, that's, and it's sort of tied to, well, you reach a certain age and your metabolism slows down, right? And you just need to eat less and exercise more. And like, why aren't you doing it, But I think what we forget is that, when we have these hormonal fluctuations, it's not even just that we're gaining weight, it's that our fat's redistributing, right? From maybe our hips where it once was. And then when estrogen starts to decline, it goes more into our abdomen, right? And we get that visceral sort of belly fat that every middle-aged woman like cringes, like you said. I think too, when our hormones decline, they also help us to have more muscle mass, right? So if we're not building muscle, we're losing muscle, if we're not working out as much, if we're not eating, enough protein, all these different things, and then we have the hormones on top of it, it's just, a recipe for that 10-pound weight gain that you talked about.
When I was going through it, I gained a good 10 pounds. And one thing that came up I thought was interesting, I'd share with you, is one of the reasons we gain that weight is because we're making less estrogen with our ovaries, and fat contains estrogen. So our body is taking estrogen from the fat. And I thought this was interesting. I don't know, no scientific data perhaps, but it gathers around the waist because it's closer to the liver, which metabolizes the fat. So what do you think about that one?
No, I think there's definitely truth to that, right? It's if our ovaries aren't producing estrogen, then something else has to take it up, whether it's like our adrenals can produce some estrogen or like you said, our fat, right? So really having more fat storage is sort of a body's survival mechanism at the end of the day. And I think that's something I really talk to my clients about. It's like your body doesn't hate you, right? It's trying to protect you as best it can. We just don't like what it's doing to protect us.
So I tell the ladies, let the body have the weight. I mean, don't go overboard, you know, but let it happen because you need it. As soon as I was done with menopause, I lost weight. I didn't need it anymore. I mean, that was just my body.
Whether we're in, our 20s, our 30s, like 20s, you're trying to like, swimsuit season, spring break, like all the comparison traps, 30s, you have your kids, you've got to lose the baby weight, then you're going through perimenopause. It's like we're always fighting and restricting our bodies. And I think sometimes when we just go with the flow and we like nourish it and understand what's happening, it's like that stress causes us to hold too. Right? It's like you talk about fat gain from estrogen, but you can have fat gain from cortisol too. So I think when we sort of ease into it and just like take a beat and understand what's happening and like honor our body with grace, it actually means we hold less of that weight, right? At the end of the day.
So let's jump into a woman observes herself going through perimenopause. She's coming into menopause. So what would you recommend that she know? I mean, what steps should she take?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's always between you and your relationship with your doctor, right? At the end of the day, I'm never going to tell you to like not do something based on your relationship with your doctor, but I think the best thing you can do is go in informed. And I think if you haven't done any of the diet and lifestyle things to support your hormones in your body and your blood sugar and your metabolism, your mitochondria, your liver detoxification pathways, right? Like, have you done the work before you decide to go on some form of HRT or something like that, right? Or even like, I mean, I'm going to say it and it's a whole other topic, but HRT and GLP-1s, right, are both medications that women going through menopause are often prescribed. But I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're just jumping off of the deep end without doing the foundations first, right? So is your blood sugar managed? Have you done like a continuous glucose monitor for a month to see what's happening with that. Do you, again, support your liver? What's your gut health like, right? Estrogen is metabolized in your gut. So if your gut is off, you could be experiencing a lot of these perimenopause symptoms when in fact you need to do some work on your gut health, right? And that may help solve the problem. What's going on with your thyroid, right? That can cause weight gain, brain fog, slow metabolism, that sort of thing too. So I think you want to make sure you're looking at the big picture before you just, dive into HRT because you've heard it on, a podcast or from one of these like influencer doctors or wellness influencers out there.
How much of these heavy symptoms that women vary in how serious they are is genetic or due to a poor lifestyle and diet?
Yeah, no, and I think that's kind of where, I work with clients who are, 48, 55, and they're like, where was this 10 years ago when I needed it? So they're sort of feeling like, well, I if I only would have known, then I wouldn't be where I am now. Me, I'm 41. So I'm like, great. Like I have all this knowledge. So when I'm in my late 40s, like HRT is a strong option for me. I would definitely consider it like when I get to that point.
So you would take it?
I would take it. I think there's a lot of protective benefits to it, right? I think not from cognition to bone health, right? All of these different things. Like estrogen is protective, right? But I think you have to also make sure your doctor is well informed too, right? Estrogen like balanced with progesterone, right? You need to have the two together. It's not just estrogen therapy, it's a combination therapy. If you're talking about testosterone, right? Start slow and low versus like a crazy heavy dose. One of the things I always talk to my clients, and it could be even like if you're going through menopause, like the heart of menopause, or if you're like me, is to know your baseline and your numbers, right? So I know I typically have low hormones. I always have my whole life. Like I've always been on the lower end of the spectrum. So I know for me personally, most likely when I start to talk about potential HRT supplementation, I don't need to go balls to the walls with like the dosage because I know my body functions at a lower level just fine. Where someone else may feel better if they did like a little bit of a higher testosterone or something, right? So I think kind of knowing where you are is really great. Like we talked about sort of going in and arming yourself when you have these conversations with your doctor is sort of knowing your numbers over the span of your 30s and 40s can be really beneficial as you enter that heart of menopause, perimenopause.
Okay, so that information, your numbers, right? And then you said your gut health. So preparing gut health. So this is what we're seeing a lot of is gut problems, bad diet, mostly refined foods, high sugars, antibiotics. What do you suggest for them to really improve their gut health?
Yeah, so it's really, it's funny. You can do stool tests and look at all those sort of things, deep down. But I have so many women who come to me and they're like, I just feel bloated and not right. And I always like by the end of the day, I look like, I'm like 5 months pregnant, right? All these different things. And I am always like, well, let's start with the basics. Are you chewing your food? Are you sitting down at meals? Are you drinking too much water? Right? Those sorts of things are kind of gut health digestion basics that I think can really help with digestion. Or, I'll have women who are like, I'm like going to the bathroom every 2 days. And I'm like, that's not good, right? We need to be going to the bathroom, eliminating every day. Because like I said, it's not only good just feel better, right? You have like more pep in your step, but also we metabolize hormones and other toxins and everything through the body through our digestion and waste elimination. So it goes through our liver and then those toxins are bundled up and then we have to excrete them. And if we don't, or if we have a microbial imbalance, there's something called the estrobolome, right? Which basically is a set of bacteria that helps our body metabolize estrogen. And when it's not working properly, it basically takes the estrogen that our body has like wrapped up in a little present and reopens it. And then it goes back into our system. So it can lead to symptoms of estrogen dominance. It can lead to those like hot flashes, night sweats, all of these different things when maybe your estrogen levels are actually fine, but it's your gut health that's causing that recirculation and redistribution of the estrogen, right? So I think when we're talking about like, should I go on HRT? Well, let's make sure too that your gut health and your liver detox pathways are also working well, because then it may buy you some time before having to go on it. You may not need it. You may need a lower dose. So kind of looking at it again, full picture.
Aren't there like herbal supplements like Chinese herbs or Ayurvedic herb that would replace HRT pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't say necessarily replace, but they're sort of like side by side, right? Kind of like which path you'd like to go. There's black cohosh, there's Vitex, chaste tree is that. So you could do those, right? Rhodiola, ashwagandha.
So there are alternatives to women who don't want to do HRT.
Yeah, exactly. Those are alternatives for women who don't want to do that, right? And I think you'd really have to work with a practitioner to kind of see what would be the best combination too, right? Black cohosh is great for the hot flashes, things like that. Vitex is really great if you have sort of a luteal phase lag, you're not producing enough progesterone, right? That can be something you can integrate in. Ashwagandha is more for like the stress anxiety side, right? So kind of what are your symptoms and what would make the most sense to integrate that way?
I think it's interesting what you said about the gut health. So, in my generation, and when we look at the longest living women in the world, they're going to be Japanese, right? They're going to be Asian, and it has everything to do with diet. And yes, with gut health. And they weren't doing HRT, and they're living now, we can see into their hundreds, and they're fine, and they're working, and they're out using their life, the years they have. What's the difference in terms of our society and theirs? Is it just that we are so easy to take medication rather than try a little harder to change our diet?
Most of the women are trying, right, really hard to change their diet and trying to do all of the things. I don't think it's a lack of like trying and willpower. I think it's like misinformation and also, again, just the marketing, right? And the quick fix culture. And that I can sort of get it from the outside instead of doing what I need to do inside. Sort of the harder aspects or like doing what would take more of the work. And I think these women, like in the blue zones, right? It's kind of if you've like the Dan Buettner, right? You've got Okinawa and Sardinia and all of these different places. And these women, again, they're fit and healthy. They don't have the belly fat and they're just living their life and they're happy. And you know that they've never done HRT. And I think it does. It comes down to high fiber diet, whole foods, olive oil, healthy fats, omegas from all the fish and community, right? I think too, a slower living, not as much stress, right? We talk about the cortisol. That's kind of a buzzword now too, right? They don't have the high cortisol, low cortisol, all of those things that we're dealing with in the States. And I think it's just unfortunately what we're dealing with like in this American culture.
Okay, so let's go back to the gut health. So give me something specific that these women can do to support their gut health.
Eat a lot of plants. It's pretty simple, a lot of fiber. I have a sheet I share with most of my private clients and it's like a plant points challenge, right? So how many different 30 can you get 30 to 40 different plants a week, right? Because it's not just about the fiber, right? You can get a lot of the fiber that you need per day from like a big tablespoon of like chia seeds and some beans, right? And you'll probably hit like your fiber quotient, but are you getting the diversity too, right? Because all of our different gut bugs, and I think that's when we talk about these women in the blue zones who are living into their hundreds, right? They're just not eating like broccoli and sweet potatoes and chickpeas, right? They're eating like so many different things because all of our gut bugs are bacteria. Each and every single one likes a little bit of a different food. Some gut bugs love red foods, right? Some loves the polyphenols and like chocolate, right? So it's, are you hitting all of those different check boxes, right? Are we eating almonds 500 times a day? Can we do like cashews or pecans or right? Like what is the diversity that we're getting? I think that is one of the best things you can do for your gut health.
So you have to learn to cook. You have to cook. You have to know how to cook this food. So do you offer that? How do you encourage women to cook? I noticed you have recipes on your Substack and things like that.
I do. I love cooking. For me, it's very cathartic. And I think like feeding my family and, I get stressed too. And some nights we do like the chicken nuggets for my daughter, right? Or like you press the easy button. But I think at the end of the day, the more you can cook in some capacity at home, and that doesn't mean it has to be like a huge family dinner. I talk a lot about assembly cooking or component cooking. So I'm not like, let's meal prep the exact same thing and have 5 containers of it to eat for lunch every day, right? It's just sad to me. Maybe it works for some people, great, but it doesn't work for me. I like, again, the variety. So I'm like, let's cook a chicken, like let's roast a chicken. Or if you need to buy a rotisserie chicken at like Whole Foods, try to make sure it's organic if possible. Cook up some quinoa, open a can of chickpeas, make sure your vegetables are like washed and chopped, and have it just ready in your fridge so that then when it comes time and you're between calls at lunch, right? You're not like ordering from the Sweet Green or the Chop down the street. You're like, you know what? I have this beautiful food prepped. I'm just going to make myself a bowl with like some arugula, some quinoa I made, some rotisserie chicken, and like some chopped cucumber and olive oil and like balsamic vinegar or something, right? So I think versus thinking about you have to cook all these meals, it's having these components that you can just then assemble and add in. The same for dinner too. Like I can't tell you how many times we do like sheet trays of just roasted vegetables, right? You cook a lot and then you have it for the next day. Throw the parchment paper in the trash and like everything's clean, right? And it's faster and cheaper than takeout.
What foods would you recommend women avoid during menopause? And what foods would you recommend? Well, you just said plant foods for their gut health. Would you recommend like probiotics? I always found that taking a probiotic may not always be as effective as eating sauerkraut or kimchi or really good fermented foods. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think, it's like, oh, I'm like have gut issues and so many doctors too will just be like, take a probiotic, right? Your problems are solved. But that's not necessarily the case. I think, like you said, yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, they're really great because you're getting more diversity in that again, which I think is the key word, right? It's your probiotics will have certain strains, the sauerkraut will have the same strains, different strains. You're just really, again, like blue zones women with our grandmothers weren't taking probiotics, they were eating fermented foods. It's not exciting, right? To be like eat whole foods, whether you're in perimenopause, whether you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 80s, eat a whole foods diet, eat plenty of plants, eat your healthy fats. When you're older, you do need to focus more on protein, right? Because again, gut health, like we don't have as much stomach acid, it's harder to digest. So you probably do need to bump your protein as you get older because you have a lot of things working against you. But I always say like the whole protein conversation, it's important. But I have so many, like, we don't need to go crazy about it too, right? Like probably around 100 grams of protein per day is probably what you should be aiming for. I think like the 150 grams that you hear sometimes are just insane.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, my generation back, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, we were at 50 grams of protein a day. Okay, so avoiding what red wine.
Yeah, a lot of women find alcohol exacerbates your symptoms. If you're getting night sweats, if you're not sleeping well, then having that glass of wine to unwind and decompress might feel really good in the moment, but you're going to be really tired the next day. So definitely wine, alcohols, seed oils, but then that goes back like packaged processed foods. Like I don't really have an issue if you're having a little bit of like sesame oil or a little bit of a seed oil, something. I think it's when you're eating out a lot that seed oils become an issue or eating those packaged processed snacks. Things that are higher in carbohydrates, like refined carbs, simple carbs, right? We need to watch out because you do become more insulin resistant as you're going through perimenopause.
You're talking about a lot of sugar products.
Yeah, exactly.
Name the villain, sugar.
Yeah, sugar. But also, right, and I think I mentioned earlier, like maybe you wanted to do a continuous glucose monitor for like 2, 4 weeks, because sometimes it's like I have women and they're doing everything, they're hitting their protein, they're eating their vegetables, and then they're going to have like rice or sweet potato, right, or something else. And they see that that actually really does spike their blood sugar. And so you kind of notice like, okay, obviously we shouldn't be having like teaspoons of sugar in our coffee or like the cupcake, right? But where are those hidden sugars or those hidden spikes that affect you personally that may not affect your best friend, but like that food causes a blood sugar spike for you, right? So I think knowing your patterns can also be helpful as well.
Okay, we've gone through perimenopause and menopause. And what about the gals who have gone through menopause? What do you got for them? They're already doing herbs, or let's say they didn't take HRT, but they're doing fine.
Yeah. I mean, I think again, it goes back to what we talked about, right? And I think you're also at that point, you're looking at longevity and cognitive function and bone health, right? So what are you doing for that? Because you don't have the estrogen, right, in your body to, again, help with all of that. So are we lifting weights? Are we, potentially wearing a weighted vest on a walk? Are we getting our, calcium and vitamin D, not necessarily, in supplement form, but also through the foods we eat? Are we eating like our omegas for our brain health, right? Those sorts of things.
Supplementation. Are we doing supplementation, taking vitamins, and at any age, are you recommending that? I noticed one of your emails said, you don't need a lot of more supplements, you need more clarity. And I thought it was very good, but I'm really interested to hear what you say about supplements.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many women will come to me and they'll like write in their health history intake form, all of the supplements they're taking. And I'm like, okay, well, these 3 supplements do the exact same thing. So you're probably over supplementing versus like under supplementing, but are you even supplementing with the right things? So we'll look at your nutrient panel from your doctor, right? Sort of the basics like a vitamin D, B12, things like that. Or we might run a nutrient test to see anything else that you're really deficient in, and then we'll supplement accordingly that way. But I also think, given the demographics, there are certain things that you do need to be supplementing. Most of us do need a supplement because our food just also isn't as rich in nutrients as it used to be. And with the stress and environmental toxins and all of the things that we're asking our body to do, we're also just plowing through the nutrients that we do have, like at a faster pace. So I usually do recommend like some basic supplements, like a vitamin D, a good multivitamin, maybe a fish oil. Those are kind of the big ones that I do recommend. In terms of women sort of in perimenopause, menopause, it's like we're thinking sort of mitochondrial function, right? Cellular energy. Are we adding in supplements for that? Like CoQ10, maybe alpha lipoic acid, right? Sort of like those mitochondrial blends. And then it's like a buzzword. I really love creatine. There's so much research behind it. I've personally been taking it for about like 4 or 5 months now. And it not only helps with, again, that muscle wasting that we see as we get older, but it also helps with cognitive function, right? So if we're talking about women post menopause, like creatine can actually be a really great way to help boost our brain health too.
Okay, tell me a little bit about your website, a little bit about your business, and how women might contact you.
Yeah, so my website is erinparekh.com, very basic. And then I have the Art of Nourishment, which is my Substack, and I send out 2 emails per week. And I really love sharing in terms of my Substack, like walk the walk, right? So you're not only going to learn the science, but you're also going to learn the how-tos and how I approach it personally as a nutritionist, but also a mom and an entrepreneur, like in the weeds myself. I think that's really important. And then on the clinical side, I work with women one-on-one in basically everything that we've talked about, right? We can do gut health, going through perimenopause, and even just sort of that bird's eye view, like mentorship, like, okay, like what's happening in your life? Let's, yes, look at it from a nutrition angle. And maybe you do want to lose that menopausal weight gain or increase your energy or have better sleep. But what's like the sort of down and dirty, like in your life that we can change and pivot and do? And I really focus on sort of that one-on-one high level care.
So let's finish up with just a few words that you might leave with women.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what you said before, right? Like clarity creates results. I think that's really something that I believe. Like when you're clear on what you need to do, that's really takes out all the noise, right? That you hear online. But if you get clear on what you actually need, that's really important. And I think too, it's like, I always say, like, it's not about doing more, right? It's about doing what works, which is kind of the same thing. So really knowing what works for you versus listening to all of these other opinions, right? And trying one thing the next week and one thing the next week and really never sticking or figuring out what works for you personally.
Thank you, Erin Parekh. Hey, I hope you all enjoyed that interview. Cleared up some things for you, all you women out there having hot flashes and can't sleep at night. I'll post all her vital information on my Delia deliaquigley.substack.com. And there you're going to find different articles, my Sunday guidance, just a whole bunch of things that I've been doing. You've been listening to Stories. I'm your host, Delia Quigley. Thanks so much for being with me.